Christ, whose glory fills the sky, Christ, the true, the only light, fill us with radiancy divine, more and more thy self-display, shining to the perfect day. Amen. Please be seated. One of my favorite views on Long Island, and this is a strange one, one of my favorite views on Long Island is from a highway in Suffolk County that runs north-south. I can never remember what road it is. I just know it when I'm on it. And it runs north to south. And at some point you reach a high spot, not a mountain, it's Long Island, but you reach a high spot, not the highest point on Long Island, that's a garbage dump. But you reach this high point in which you can see the Great South Bay. So if you're heading south, you make your way up this hill, and all of a sudden there in front of you is the Great South Bay, off in the distance. It's a particularly striking view in the rearview mirror as you're driving up the hill and glance back and all of a sudden see this behind you. The view doesn't last for long, but it is something about it is enchanting to me. Mountaintops or high places give new perspectives of familiar things that appear quite different close up. It hides, for example, the traffic and new buildings cutting through what once was undeveloped land. It hides the incompleteness and messiness. It hides the pain and suffering of those in the valley below. Views from mountaintops seem to smooth over the rough spots in the world. I can remember my visit to the Mount of Transfiguration. It doesn't seem like more than a foothill, and it is located in the northern plains of the Galilee. And it sits out in the middle of a huge plateau, so it seems surrounded by this huge valley. The view is quite spectacular. There is a spiritual power in these moments on mountaintops that permeates the whole place and makes you want to stay forever and just forget the world down there. No wonder Peter wanted to stay. People in biblical times knew the magic of the mountaintop. Moses, Abraham, Elijah, Jesus all receive insight on the top of mountains. A mountain was often regarded as a holy place where the heavens could touch the earth and where God could speak to humankind. Thus, it was no accident that the transfiguration of Christ took place on a mountaintop. Jesus led Peter and James and John up a high mountain so that God could reveal Christ's true identity to them. In this place, they learned that Jesus was not just their teacher, but was in fact the very Son of God. Peter was so impressed that he wanted to capture the moment, predating Kodak. He wanted to capture the moment, so he suggested building a shrine right there with 3 dwellings, one for Moses, one for Elijah, and one for Jesus. How much better it would be to stay there than to return to the valley where they would have to fight off the crowds and deal with the poor and the sick and the sinners who were attracted to Jesus. Peter's response was typical. It was spontaneous and honest, and in fact, relatable. Most of us, I dare say, can remember times when we felt especially close to the divine. And we know how painful it can be to feel those experiences fade into memory, to feel doubts and dullness creep back in as we face the challenges of real everyday life. We have all wished that we could stay in that place, where we wish that we could stay and view the world with one clear, crisp vision, and that it would never change. In the end, Peter wasn't allowed to stay on the mountain, and neither are we allowed to stay in those experiences. the transfiguration wasn't meant to last, but it was meant to be a transformation. This experience took place so that Jesus and the disciples could come back down the mountain with a renewed sense of purpose. It gave them the necessary strength for their trip back to those who were sick and hurting. God gathered them on that mountain, transformed them, and sent them out into the world to love and serve with gladness in their heart. Our lives of faith have their transformative moments. And at the same time, those moments never tell the whole story. Views from the mountaintop can never be predicted, and they can never be preserved. I live more often in the valley than on the mountain. I am sometimes very sure of God's presence, but I am also often doubting. I sometimes recognize myself as forgiven, beloved by God, and at other times, I'm not quite so sure. I sometimes have a clear, purposeful view of what I am supposed to do as a follower of Christ, and at other times, I'm not so sure how to best serve God. These mountaintops, literal or figurative, are God's gift to us. They give us perspective, and they fill us with love's renewing light and hope's imagination. As Moses knew, they are places to encounter God. The views are like rare gifts, dreams that dawn upon our restless nights, strengthening our discipleship, and encouraging us when we feel confused and fruitless. We need not fear coming down the mountain, though, because God is also in the valleys. God is in the valleys, turning chaos into grace. The valleys are, in fact, where we, the people of God, live most of our lives and proclaim hope to the brokenhearted and share the balm of gladness, God's mercy, peace, and love. Michael Ramsey was the Archbishop of Canterbury for a long time, and he noted that Christian faith is not a panacea, but a gospel of transfiguration. Jesus' transfiguration might have been an isolated historic event. God's transformation of our hearts, minds, and actions is an ongoing part of our Christian life and faith. They could not stay in that moment. Jesus and the disciples had the regular, everyday tasks and events to get back to. They started back down the mountain, back into the valley, ministering in the valley where there is evil, poverty, longing, hurt, and need. This event modeled for us how we are to live our lives. After this Eucharist, after practicing our faith in our liturgy, we are sent by God into the world where the real liturgy begins, where the real work begins, where we are agents of God's transformation in the valleys outside these doors. So the next time you get a view from the mountaintop, or just in the rearview mirror on a slightly high road, stop and take it for the gift that it is. Feel the presence of God. And remember that like Moses and Elijah, Peter, James, and John, and Jesus, you must come down to the valley. And when you do, allow God to transform your heart, your mind, and your action, and share God's love in word and deed. And then together, we can all view our valleys as if they were mountaintops. Amen.